Welcome to the Nick and Jimmy Show. I'm Jimmy, this is Nick, and on today's episode we have Johnny Gumbley. So talk to us, tell us your story.
So when we're talking about the nightlife industry, the first place I opened was not Coquino, it was Orchid, but it used to be called Coquino before Orchid. And I don't want to admit my age, but that's getting like 18 or 19 years ago now. So I have to do my 20th anniversary soon, I just realized while I'm talking to you guys. What happened was I had a record label and I was making music in Montreal. And I was sponsoring specifically urban parties in the city. And one of the promoters that I used to sponsor got the opportunity to buy into Coquino and turn it into a new club. And I was one of the people he approached to do it. So he probably approached a lot of people because they needed money to get it done and investors and so on and so forth. We invested, I took over Coquino and we turned it into Orchid, which ended up being my first club. I had no idea what I was doing. But it seemed like a smart shift from what I love to do, which was create music, to having a place that's filled with music and making people have a great time due to music.
And you were how old at that time?
When I bought it, I was 20, and when I had started running it, I was 21. So that was my first nightclub. What happened was the people that I had invested in were problematic, and it wasn't going well. Mm-hmm. We launched the business, and it wasn't successful, let's say. It was actually far from successful. We were losing money on a weekly basis. People weren't coming. People weren't buying the concept that we put up. And as you know, and we've discussed, I come from very humble beginnings. Yes. And it was very stressful for me that I had made some money, and whatever I had made, I put into that business thinking it was going to be a great way to like magnify the money I've already made. And it turned out being the opposite. So I decided to end up becoming an actual operating partner of Orchid, and I took over a night and I started to run it. And that night was Friday. Fridays are harder than Saturdays. Everybody goes out on Saturday. Fridays not so much. And the Friday started doing far better than the Saturday within a few weeks. Long story short, I found out that I'm pretty good at the nightlife industry. I built a bunch of contacts in that short period of time. And one by one, I bought out most of the other partners that were in that business. And I ended up going from being a 12% owner, silent partner, to being vast majority. I think I had like 75 or 85% within a year or a year and a half, and running the business myself at the top of the pyramid.
What made you go from from that moment to where you are right now? What was like the defining moment of your life? How did you get to become that entrepreneur that you are today?
There's not a defining moment. There's a series of defining moments. Yeah. I guess we could say the beginning of my life, or the early years of me trying to do well, were just to escape poverty. So it's like I was born into a situation that wasn't ideal and I didn't love, and I wanted to do better, and I was always looking for a way to do that. So my defining moment when I was young is basically waking up every day and trying to figure out how I'm going to get ahead and do better. So what I started doing is my first promise to myself or to anybody was that no matter what I did, I was always going to be the best at whatever it was. So I mean, like, it could be making an airplane out of paper and folding it. I would practice folding that airplane 1,000 times until mine flew further than the other kids in school, you know? It was just anything. I figured that if I'm going to be on this earth like we all are, and I'm gonna put time into anything, why should I put that time let's be honest, in a half-assed kind of way. Like, if I had to work, I worked at McDonald's later on, and McDonald's helped me out a lot. I started when I was 16 at McDonald's. I became a manager. But a lot of my friends, I brought in all kinds of guys that went to school with me and stuff like that. It ended up being my social group that was working there, but they were putzing around. They weren't trying to do well. At McDonald's, for instance, I wanted to impress the manager. I wanted to become the manager. I wanted to like potentially learn from that. I'm not just gonna take my $8 an hour and flip some burgers. I was like, well, if there's 16 people here that don't know what they're doing, I want to take my time to teach them all to become the person that like, I became the crew chief, you know, like at McDonald's. So
Well, I guess that's where you practice your leadership.
Yeah.
You found a system, and now where you are today, obviously you're still hungry for more success.
Yeah.
You know, we hear that you're going to open up one of the most luxurious boutique hotels in Montreal. What keeps, you know, making you work harder every single day to?
It's the challenge of creating. So, like I said, defining moments are very different. If I really started, my father died when I was young. It made me have to learn how to do the banking, accounting, buying things with my mom, with my groceries, and taking her shopping, because as you both know, my mom is deaf and blind. So I had to take on a lot of responsibility. Later on, it was like, I had a nephew really, really young, and I wanted to be a role model to my nephew, and then it was I wanted to do good in school, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, and what's happened in the last decade, is I get bored. So the thing that I love the most is I like to create. I like that process where an idea starts in my mind, and that it snowballs and it continues to grow. And I love taking what was just an initial thought and turning it into a reality. And the biggest kick, it's not the money that I make from my projects. And thank God, thank the Lord, or thank whoever, knock on something.
Yes.
But I do well financially.
You're blessed, yes.
Because of my projects. But the thing that I appreciate the most is when I took that idea, I turned it into something, and then other people respond to it and like it. So it makes me feel justified in my passions and my thoughts, that other people are buying into it and enjoying and appreciating what I do.
So how important is it to think big?
You have to think, for me, I think as big as I possibly can, and as circumstances change, you could slowly whittle down and come to a more reasonable understanding of what you're doing. But aim for the sky, aim for the stars, you know, and don't let anything stop you from getting that high. If you give yourself like very, very common goals, even if you get to them, what's the point? If you're gonna work your butt off anyways, go far above and beyond what you think you could achieve, because if you do make it, you know, run on the clouds.
So John, let's talk about law of association. So we interviewed many individuals successful just like yourself, and one thing many of them have in common is their surroundings, who they surround themselves with. How important is that in your opinion?
It's almost a trick question, because it's very obvious you are who you're surrounded by. I mean, like, when I was younger, I was always like, I'm gonna make it on my own. And, you know, I grew up, everyone was on welfare pretty much around me, and the people who weren't were blue collar, like very nice, great people, but modest people. And you would see, like, call them the rich kids, and wonder, like, how does this happen and what's going on? The whole idea of going to a private school is that, yes, the education part is better, but from a young age, potentially you're surrounded by the children of doctors, lawyers, accountants, business owners. And as you grow up and you're 21 or 22, when you have that initial business idea, because of your surroundings, all of a sudden you know the son or the nephew or somebody that owns the company that could set you up with your first big break. And because of that, you have the direct contact to them. When you start with nothing and you don't have that advantage, obviously it's way, way, way harder to get ahead, because you have no idea where to go with your idea and who could help you, right? So who you are surrounded by, and later on it changes too. You could look at it in a different way. So as you get older and you define yourself, and you start to be around people that are able to grow with you and understand your wants and needs, it's super, super important. Now, the reason why I said it's a trick question, and one of the things that I pride myself on more than anything in the world, it's very easy to have a Ferrari and hang around with a guy with a Ferrari, because the guy with the Ferrari wants to be in the Ferrari club and you both have Ferraris. It's really hard to be the guy who ended up having a Ferrari, who started with nothing, that remembers to go back and help the people and try to inspire them to do better. So the thing that drives me more than anything on a personal level, outside of business, where I said was I love to like bring things into fruition, is to take younger people, children, more or less, and give them, help inspire them and give them goals. So it's really important to surround yourself with winners, but it's also really important to remember that you have to give back. And the greatest feeling of self-accomplishment is you take someone that might not have been able to do something and inspire them to do something great with their life, that means the most to me.
Yes. You said you started on your own, obviously, and you got out of that environment. Did you have any person that you were looking up to? Did you have a mentor, somebody that helped you?
So that's another question that's loaded for me. So my father was my original inspiration, just because my memories of him, although are very few, because he passed away when I was just turned 6. He was a good man, and it was very clear, and he loved me very much. And I remember he took me to like Star Wars movies, Star Trek movies. He bought me like trading cards and stuff like that. He was very dear to me. And the surviving family members always told me that he was a great man with a good heart. Very simple man, but a very good person. So I used to always imagine when I was about to make bad decisions or when I needed to make the right decision, that he was like in heaven looking down on me, and I had to like do something good for him. So that's my first inspiration. A year ago, I was on a thing called Influence Montreal that Thierry Lindor did, and somebody popped that question, who's your role model? And I didn't have one. Like everyone else that was on the panel with me had something to say, and they had read a book about somebody that inspired them. I didn't have that. But recently, I went to see Motown, the musical. And what I realized was, just from that story, and I did some work, Barry Gordy, the founder of Motown, is somebody that inspired me indirectly. Because when I was doing the music, I really wanted to be Puff Daddy. That was the thing. And Barry Gordy is sort of like the original Puff Daddy. He basically started with nothing, built this whole music empire. Within his music empire, he built a family of well-known artists. He trained them how to speak properly. He trained them how to dance. He trained them how to perform. He basically created a whole foundation for what was, when I talk about helping, impoverished youth and stuff, he did that with the black community to like give them an opportunity to get on the national spotlight and create something for themselves and create a legacy. Now, Barry Gordy, at the end, it seemed like he didn't take care of his artists financially, and that's why his empire crumbled, let's say. But what he did in the beginning to start with nothing, and there was Smokey Robinson, there's Marvin Gaye, there's Diana Ross, obviously the Jackson 5, Stevie Wonder, and it goes on and on and on, the Temptations. All of this was created from one man's mind and drive that changed the world of music for a long time. So the long answer to that is that would be my inspiration, although it has nothing to do with what I do today. My goal now is with this one boutique hotel to hopefully create a brand, and no more am I going to be open a bar. I'm going to open a hotel with 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, who knows how many rooms in the future, which will consist, within it will consist a supper club, a cocktail bar, basically all the facilities that I've learned how to develop at one time.
So New York style, what's it?
New York style, exactly, but my whole point is that I continually evolve, and that although I started with music and then nightclubs, at some point I'm already moving into hotels, and then there's always going to be a next level for me because, as I mentioned, I get bored pretty easily, so we'll see what happens.
Rooftop?
There's two there's a terrace on the ground floor that's about 2,000 square feet, and then there's a smaller rooftop terrace, and I'm actually building so it's a 3-story building that I'm converting into a 5-story building, and the top floor is 2 penthouses all made out of glass that can convert into one big penthouse where you could have like a business function if somebody wants to rent it, or just like a big gathering for a corporate, or like a really baller out of this world bachelorette and stuff like that. No one's going to be allowed under 25 as much as possible because I don't want my glass to get broken, obviously. But yeah.
Good. And what's the name of the hotel? And when is it coming out? When is it ready?
So right now the name of the hotel is bord'elle, to kind of stay true to my bord'elle roots. And I'm thinking of it, if everything goes well, it'll be a chain that starts with Beau. So first it's Botelle, next it will be Beaujois. There'll be different names that start with Beau. Hopefully, we're going to be able to open the hotel early spring next year, around April.
And let's talk about time management, right? As a club owner, right? How do you work around your schedule with a beautiful wife, 2 beautiful children? How does that work? You come, it's...
Because they're beautiful, it's a lot easier.
Okay.
If they were ugly, it would be tough. No, I'm just joking. So time management is super important. It's probably the hardest thing to learn in the world, but the most important thing to learn in the world. So the earlier you could learn how to manage your time, the better it is. So basically, first of all, I have to prioritize. What's the most important thing and what do I not miss? So for me, the most important thing, despite how busy I am and despite how I'm dedicated to my businesses, it's my family. I don't miss any special event for my kids. I plan their birthday parties. Shauna doesn't, like, I take Shauna out at least once a week that we go out and have a dinner, probably more than once a week most of the time. We do everything together. Now, basically in the last years, what I've done is now I have an assistant who basically does my scheduling for me. So now, instead of me worrying about when's my meeting, how am I going to plug it in, am I available at this time, my mind is used only for creating. I'm not, any menial tasks I've taken away from myself. In September, I'm having a second assistant, and that assistant, what they're gonna do is basically follow me around, do the social media for me while I'm meeting people, talking, discussing things, and also make sure that she's gonna do preliminary meetings for me now, rather than me doing the initial meeting with somebody, because I get offers to meet for all kinds of stuff, and I wanna being that I'm humble and being nice and believing that you have to give everyone a chance, I try to meet everyone I can, but now, because I'm so busy, I'll have her sort of like do the first sit down and figure out, is there something that I could do with that person or that group that makes sense to take that extra hour, you know? So how I learned how to do time management, I didn't. I was a disaster for many years. And in the last few years, I've really learned how, by having other people, because I come from Verdun, I think you don't know what an assistant is, you don't know why you would need one. And then when you figure it out, that what I'm great at is the only thing I should be focusing on, and the things around that, other people should be doing that for me, so I could only be like with like pinpoint precision, focused on my goals and the things that I'm strong at, and let all those other things somebody else do for me.
Exactly. Even if you have to pay for them to get them done, just let them get done.
Pay for them is nothing. If I'm paying $2,000 a week for people to do those other tasks, I'm able to generate $5,000 more a week by being.
Your mind is worth a lot more than what you're paying out for.
110%.
So obviously, John, Montreal is known for nightlife. Everybody comes here to party and all that good stuff, and there's a lot of competition. What separates your supper clubs, your clubs, from all the thousands of other clubs?
Okay. Well, so we're gonna have to going forward and not going backwards with that answer, because bord'elle is the first of the new generation, let's call it. So like I said before, first of all, I define everything I'm doing now as adult playgrounds. Almost everything that I'm doing is going to be catered to people of 25 years and over. Okay. So there's not going to be the university demo and like the teeny bopper and kiddie thing going on at all. It's going to be a little more corporate, young professionals, and more or less stricter dress codes, because we want people, the idea of adult playgrounds is that we want people to feel like they're going out for a night on the town and they took the time to, I want the women that come to my place to feel like tonight's the night to put on her nice shoes and her dress. I want the guy to think tonight's the night to wear my suit jacket, I'm not showing up in just a t-shirt. And not only to think that, you're not gonna get in otherwise. So you're gonna learn by not getting in at the door. The secondary part of adult playgrounds and what I'm doing beyond the age is that we're working really hard to develop a fusion of entertainment that is interactive, that happens during the night, meaning there's no stop and go and hey, look, now it's time to look at the stage. Now it's not. We have performers that are just blending into the crowd and making things happen and entertaining you with food, nightlife, and like a bar atmosphere. So basically, we're also going to be providing one-stop shops where, as a 30-something-year-old celebrating your 30th birthday, you want to eat and party and maybe have bottle service. We don't want you to think that you have to go to 2 or 3 different places to do that. We're going to do them all flawlessly. So in the past, you might not have wanted to move 3 times, but you knew you couldn't get good food and a great party. You'd have to go to 2 separate places. Our goal is to provide the top of the top on both experiences, which we don't believe has fully happened or is fully happening in Montreal yet. We're still not there either. We have a ways to go, but my goal is to get to that level.
Are you planning to expand outside of the Montreal market? Are you expand, your concept anywhere else in the world?
So that's a great question, and I'm surprised I didn't mention that. The next step. So right now we have the hotel in development. We also have a big venue in development that I want to kind of turn into my own circus. Like I want to be like, you know, P.T. Barnum, you know, whatever. But it's going to be a circus nightclub if the deal goes through. So that would be the next thing. After that, in 2020, that's in Montreal. In 2020, I certainly plan to, and I've already started light discussions with people that I would need to have these discussions with for it to happen, opening a bord'elle in Toronto, and then potentially moving it further south, maybe Miami, New York, somewhere into the States. But I definitely plan on having a bord'elle in Toronto, and Toronto, I believe, is sorely lacking something like bord'elle as well.
Beautiful.
Awesome. And for everybody watching this interview, this conversation, and if they want to follow your journey, how can they get in contact with you, or how can they follow you online? Facebook's.
Okay, so basically you could find me anywhere under John E. Gumbley, so John, the letter E, and then Gumbley, Gumbley, on Instagram. So I'm starting to be working on being more around, more prominent on Instagram. And my new handle is Daddy Nightlife. The whole idea of that, we didn't even talk about it that much, is that one of my main things that I'm most proud of is blending the ability to be a good father and a family man while running what people consider the most evil and dirtiest of businesses, late at night in the dark with booze and all the women around, but doing it in a great way. So like the balance of being a daddy and a nightlife entrepreneur, Daddy Nightlife.
I love it. I love it.
Well, once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Thank you for inviting us at your beautiful home here in South Shore, Montreal. Really appreciate it. We applaud you, really appreciate you. Thank you very much. If you like this content and want more content, please like our page, The Nick and Jimmy Show. Follow myself, Jimmy Tsiampuras, and Nick Carnicolas, and John E. Gumbley on social media. Subscribe, like, and share. Thank you very much.